Jalla, wir gucken Minecraft Fastest Mobs, die schnellsten Monster in Minecraft rein. Digga, was ist das schnellste Mob in Minecraft? Rein.
We've gathered all of the mobs in Minecraft to see which one is the fastest. And if you think it's any of these mobs, stay
Das schnellste, was ich mir jetzt vorstellen könnte, wäre ein Delfin.
tuned. You might be surprised. But first, we've got a problem. YouTube tells me that the fastest anyone... And even if you subscribed after the bell, it means a lot, and thank you. Now let's start with the mobs that move the slowest and then work our way up. And in that case, we should talk about the turtle first.
Ja, Digga, die ist so langsam, die Schildkröte.
Now, unsurprisingly, the turtle on land moves very slow, about 0.3 blocks per second.
Digga,
And folks,
so
that gives
langsam.
it the slowest land speed in the game. And while it is pitiful, it's actually not the slowest mob in the game, since when you get it in water, it'll move at a speed of 2 blocks per second.
Ja, in
Which,
Wasser
don't get
ist
me
es
wrong,
schnell.
still isn't fast, but it's far from the slowest in the game. And in that case, the actual slowest mob that you would find would be the panda, especially its lazy variant. Now, in our testing, it moved at a speed of less than a block per second, only coming
Ja, aber der liegt ja auf dem Rücken und sowas. Ist ja nicht, oder?
out to about 0.98 blocks per second. But you'll find that it does move faster if you aggravate it, since an aggro panda can move at a speed of 1.4 blocks per second, which is still pretty bad. I mean, we can move faster than that if we crawl, but hey, at least it's not lazy. Now, a good baseline going forward for the other mobs would be the zombie. It's not fast, it only moves at about 2.3 blocks
Zombie
per
ist
second,
normal
but
schnell.
at least this is the first mob on the list where it actually has a chance of catching you if you're not paying attention. But even then, we've still got over 20 mobs on this list that are much faster than the zombie. And while there's still a faster zombie for us to talk about, first, we've got to cover the witch. Now, on paper, the witch will only walk about a half a block faster than the zombie. But where that starts to get interesting is through the swiftness potion. See, after the witch drinks this,
Ja gut, aber du kannst ja rein theoretisch jedem Mob Speed geben, ist das gleiche.
it gets an extra block per second in its movement speed, which sounds like a big improvement, but
Aber
it
das ist
still
krass.
moves at less than 4 blocks per second movement speed, only clocking in at about 3.89 blocks. And honestly, considering it's the only mob that can drink a swiftness potion, you would expect the results to be higher. I mean, even a standard baby zombie can still outrun a swiftness potion
Ja,
witch.
Baby-Zombie ist
In
so
normal
nervig.
conditions, a baby zombie can run over 5 blocks per second, which is over double the speed of the adult zombie. And by this point, it actually becomes a threat if you run out of hunger and you can't sprint, since the player's typical walking speed is only about 4.3 blocks per second. But
schnell
if you're
ist
not
der?
able to sprint yet you still have yourself a pig in a saddle, you can still
Wie
get
schnell ist der normale Zombie?
blocks. And honestly, babies outrun us blocks per second. As it
15,
is, even the
das ist krass.
Ravager's movement 0.2 speed boost, it'll move at a speed of 5.2 blocks per second, which just barely edges out the baby's
Aber so ein Schwein ist schon schnell eigentlich, ne?
zombie's movement speed. I mean, it's a whole 0.06 blocks faster. It's not that much. But don't worry, this is nowhere near the fastest rideable mob in Minecraft, and we'll get to that later in the video. But as it is, even the Ravager is capable of moving faster than a pig, even without a speed boost. Now, I will mention,
Boah,
this
das
is not when
Vieh
it's
ist- das
walking,
Vieh ist echt
since then
schnell.
it'll only move at about 0.6 blocks
Das
per
Vieh
second,
ist echt
which
schnell,
is
wenn's
almost
aggro
about
ist.
as slow as the turtle. But once you get it angry, then it can run at a speed of nearly 5.3 blocks per second,
Das Vieh
which
ist
is
nervig in
fast,
Raids.
but if you run in a straight line, you can still outpace it with a sprint.
Ja gut, das
Though where
stimmt.
that sprinting becomes an issue is once we have to face the warden. Now in our testing, when the
Digga, der ist ja neu, der ist ja auch ultra schnell. Stimmt.
warden's chasing after you or something else, it can run at a speed of
Oh, guck dir den an.
5.6 blocks per second, which is scary, since that's almost identical to how fast the player can sprint if you don't use potion effects. And that means if you're getting chased and you make just one wrong move, the warden has the chance to catch up, and the rest is history. And honestly, I don't know what's scarier, the fact that it
Digga,
can move
rennt ja,
this
das sieht echt
fast, or
goofy
that it
aus.
deals 45 points of damage when it
Guck dir
catches
den
up to
an.
you. But even though it might be a struggle for us to outrun a warden, for the villagers, it's an easy breeze. Odd as it may seem,
Boah, Villager sind echt schnell, wenn die aggro sind, ne? Und Angst haben.
a villager is actually faster than the player.
Guck mal,
It's
Junge.
not just when they're walking around the village, but rather, when nighttime comes, they'll be able to move very fast, at a speed that tops over 6 blocks per second.
Junge, wie
But you gotta
schnell.
keep in mind, this
Guck mal,
only
wie der
happens when you're
wegrennt.
fleeing from something like a zombie, which is specific, but it proves that sometimes it might be worth being a coward. And the cow will prove that even further. So even though this mob normally walks slower
Aber eine Kuh ist doch nicht schneller als eine Villager.
than the pig, when it's fleeing from damage, then it can run at nearly 7 blocks per second. And what cracks me up is that it doesn't even move that fast when it's following you for food, which I guess that means that the stick is a better motivator than the carrot, or wheat in this case. Now, this is the part of the video where I tell you that we didn't just calculate the horizontal movement speed, but we calculated how fast a mob can move in all directions. Because
Ja, das ja sowieso, oder nicht?
Because when you factor that into the list, a lot of the mobs that we're about to see start to get a lot faster. And first in those candidates happens to be the rabbit, which when it starts sprint jumping can flee at a speed of 8.26 blocks per second.
Wow.
And to put the rabbit's speed into perspective, that's almost as fast as an Enderman, since an aggressive Enderman can move at a speed of 8.75 blocks per second. And when they can both move that fast, I don't know if I'm more afraid of the killer bunny or the aggressive Enderman. But obviously, the Enderman can still teleport about 45 blocks every 4 ticks. So that's gotta make it faster than the rabbit.
Ja gut, aber mit Teleportieren ist ja unfair.
But oddly enough, it still won't be the fastest mob in the game. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's put a pin in that for now, and we'll talk about the Strider.
Oh, Strider ist krass, Strider ist krass.
Fast, but much like a pig,
Strider ist krass schnell, no joke.
If you right-click with a fungus on a stick, then the two of you can start to move at a speed
so
of
schnell?
8.9 blocks per second.
Nein,
which
das
still only makes it fast enough
so schnell ist das doch nicht,
to be in
oder?
the top 50% of mobs, but
Holy
hey,
shit.
it let Dream escape the hunters, so that proves that this run speed is still good enough for a speed run. Though unfortunately for us, our friendly Striders still stand
Das ist schon echt sehr, sehr schnell gewesen. Also wirklich. Das war schon sehr schnell.
chance against the unfriendly spider. But let me be clear, in most cases, these spiders
die gibt's auch mit Speed-Effekt, ne?
can only move at around a speed of 3.9 blocks per second, which is by no means fast. But on hard mode, that all changes. Since in harder difficulties, there's a chance for spiders to spawn with a positive attribute, including the speed 1 potion effect. And with that, if a spider spawns with speed 1 and then uses its jump attack to chase you, it can reach a top speed of 11.2 blocks per second. And now that we're into the double-digit movement speeds, these mobs are gonna get a lot harder to catch, like the Ocelot, for instance.
Oh my god, das
now,
ist
if you've
so
ever messed
nervig.
up on trying to tame one of these, you know it's fast, but did you know that an Ocelot can flee at a max speed of 11.6 blocks per second?
That's krass.
And the same will be true for the cats that spawn in the village. Though those cats still have one trick up their sleeve, and we'll see that later in the video. But before we get to that, I'm gonna have to teleport away from our test track, since this next mob isn't as
Ja, Wither ist krass.
cooperative. Folks, it's time to test the Wither. As our first boss in the list, this mob can reach some solid speed, at a rate of 14.5 blocks per second in our testing. And the way that we actually see this is that you'll notice that when the Wither changes which mob it's targeting, that's when it moves its fastest. And while that change around seems quick, it actually is still one of the slowest flying mobs in the game. No joke, even the Vex can move faster than the Wither, albeit slightly.
Ja
See,
gut,
when the
Vex, wenn die Topspeed auf dich zufliegt, ist sie schon
Vex
schnell.
charges a target, it can move at a speed of 14.56 blocks per second, which just barely edges out the movement speed of the Wither. But I should note that since we're testing the speed using in-game command blocks, that's a verifiable enough method to justify that much of a difference. And that means that it's likely more than just human error. And as such, the Vex takes our top spot. But not for long, because even with all that justification, the Vex still doesn't stand a chance against the Fox. Since when a Fox jumps through the air, it can reach a speed of 19.8 blocks per second. Nearly 20 blocks covered just like that. All to just reach a chicken, which seems like overkill if you ask me, but since we've now seen how fast a rabbit can move, it might be more justified in some cases. Finally, we get to talk about horses. Now, this mob has a lot of...
Das Problem ist, es gibt ja wirklich so geisteskranke Pferde, wenn du die mit Speed passt, sind die ja auch wirklich danach schneller, ne? Das ist so dumm.
Variability in its speed stats. So for our testing, let's only look at the theoretical fastest horse that you can breed, which is tough enough to get, but even after that, we still have other
Wie kriegt man das schnellste Pferd, das es in Minecraft gibt? Einfach immer mit Speed abwerfen und dann paaren? Oder wie?
variables to consider, like how the horse runs normally at 14.2 blocks per second, but if you strafe to the side as well as moving forward, then that adds on another 0.3 blocks per second faster. And if you jump as well, then it can reach a top speed of 21.5 blocks per second, which is fast, but even after all that effort to breed the fastest horse in the game, it'll still be slower than your average dolphin. Usually the dolphin.
Guck mal, Delfin habe ich, das ist eines, das was mir am Anfang eingefallen ist, ein Delfin. Und der ist jetzt hier knapp am Ende vom Video. Das heißt, es war nicht schlecht.
Move very fast, only swimming at about 4.7 blocks per second, and that only goes up to 15 blocks per second when they're targeting you while angry. But where this mob really picks up its speed is when it jumps out of the water. See, when a dolphin jumps to pick up an item, it's possible to reach a top speed in our testing of 22.89 blocks per second, which makes them the second fastest underwater mob in the game. And before we see the greatest of all time, we need to address the goat. That is the goat mob. Now, make no mistake, the goat is a fast mob, and you'll see that when it charges
Boah, das ist ja wirklich anders schnell.
Roughly a speed of 15.5 blocks per second when it charges at you. But more so than that, it can jump at a speed of 22.92 blocks per second, which beats out the likes of the dolphin, although by just a hair. And
ja, aber ich finde, der Delfin ist cooler als die Ziege.
Narrow margin for sure, don't worry, it's not going to make any difference on our top 5. Because speaking of which, now it's time to see the fastest passive mob in Minecraft, the Axolotl. And oddly enough, the top speed that we're going to see here is because of a glitch.
Ach so,
now, you'll
oh my
notice that when you
god.
tie an Axolotl with a lead to a fence, it'll start to move very fast around around
guck
in
dir
a
die
circle.
Vollidioten
And
an.
if you put it in water next to a squid, it can go even quicker with a target nearby.
Wow,
Reaching some
wow,
speeds
Junge.
of 23.6 blocks per second, which
Okay.
that alone sounds like a lot, but let me put it into perspective. That's almost as fast as the Ender Dragon. That's right, folks. The Axolotl with a lead is only about a half a
Ein Axolotl mit einer Leine ist fast so schnell wie der Ender Dragon. Ist das dumm?
block slower than the flying Ender Dragon, which makes this texture pack feel a lot more fitting. But jokes aside, the Ender Dragon will still take our current top spot, since it's capable of moving at a speed of 24 blocks per second. And considering the player can only move at a speed of 5.6 blocks per second when we're sprinting, it's impressive that the Ender Dragon can do 4 times that without even breaking a sweat. And what's even crazier is that still, the Ender Dragon is not faster than a Phantom. No joke, a Phantom can swoop down and hit the player at a speed of 24.2 blocks per second, which just makes this mob all that more annoying, which is yet another reason for you to sleep through the night so you can get rid of these things. But what's worth mentioning here is that even though we can change the Phantom's size using commands, that doesn't seem to impact its speed. And the reason that's worth mentioning is because that very thing does happen when we change the size of the slime. As we've pointed out in the past, a player cannot
Stimmt, Slimes werden ja auch schneller, wenn die größer sind.
Run a size 8 slime. And the same is true and then some when we summon in a size 255 slime. Now for this bit of testing, we're actually going to use magma cubes instead, since they have a higher jump than the slime counterpart, meaning they can move even further and they'll do it faster. Therefore, a size 255 magma cube can reach an average speed of 350
Ja, okay, 350 Blöcke pro Sekunde. Aber ist ja auch kein normales Vanilla Minecraft
And
Mob.
folks, that's just an average. There's a theoretical speed of 500 blocks per second here, but we can barely keep it in place long enough to test it. I mean, this thing's so fast that by the time that it's jumped twice, it's already out of your render distance.
Guck mal, wo es
and that
hinspringt.
means it just despawns. Which all begs the question, if this mob is so fast, then why is it still not number 1? Well, after testing every mob in the game, the fastest one turns out to be the parrot, or the wolf, or the cat. See, we have a
Sag mir jetzt nicht, weil die einem Spieler hinterher TPen. Wenn ja, wäre das wirklich langweilig.
3-way tie, since these mobs are all pets. And what pets can do that no other mob can
Oh nein, das stimmt, finde ich, ist langweilig.
instantaneously teleport an infinite number of blocks in a second. And it's so fast that our testing system can't even calculate the speed.
Nee, also das jetzt unendlich Blöcke pro Sekunde als Speed zu nehmen, finde ich scheiße. Ich finde es ja auch schon scheiße, dass man Hochspringen mit Speed vergleicht. Nee, das finde ich nicht cool.
It's off the charts, folks. So if you count teleporting, these are the fastest mobs in
Nee, Teleport counten wir mal nicht. Und einen Magma Cube, der mit einem Comment Größe gemacht wurde, würde ich auch nicht dazu zählen. No joke, dann ist das Phantom Platz 1. Das ist ja alles Quatsch da. Phantom Platz 1, Ender Dragon, Axolotl mit einer Leine und dann kommt irgendwann auch Ziege und dann Delfin, glaube ich, ne? Also meine Schätzung war die Top 5.
Minecraft.
Also die richtige Top 5.
And if you're going off pure movement speed, these are the fastest ones in vanilla. And with
Ja, Vanilla würde ich den hier jetzt auch nicht bezeichnen, aber ja.
speed, these are the fastest.
Ja, Phantom ist, wäre ich nicht drauf gekommen. Das auf Phantom und Ocelot sowieso nicht mit der Leine, weil es auch eigentlich ein Bug ist. Egal, Delfin war ein guter Call, no joke. Ey, das war ein sehr, sehr gutes Video. Das gibt ein Like. Gutes Video.